Hello, my name is Doug Tepe, and I am the lead instructor for Tinker and Create. And starting next week, we're going to be continuing the classes that we started because of the COVID-19 to teach you a little bit more STEM skills while we are all stuck at home. And now that the summer has come, and I'm sure many of you are going to be out of school, now's the time to maybe pick up some fun new skills. So, starting next week, we are going to be covering 3D animation, and we're going to be using a tool called Blender. I've already prepared an animation to demonstrate what we will be building in our class. This is what I've already made ahead of time, and it's going to cover all the major elements that we will be covering, including adding in sound and music. Blender is one of the best, highest quality, free 3D modeling tools that's out there. It is an exceptionally powerful tool and very easy to get into ever since they updated their user interface back last summer to be much, much easier to use than it used to be. So, this class is going to be intended to be watched by students between the 3rd and the 8th grade. And so even if you're, of course, younger than that or older than that, you're always welcome to follow along with us. And so today, right now at least, along with the introduction to the class that we'll be teaching next week, as well as with plans on what we're going to start doing, I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration on how you can find Blender and install it on your home computer. So let's take a look. I am currently looking at the blender.org website, so you can find it by going to www.blender.org. I think even if you just do a Google search or a Bing search and you type in Blender, you will of course find a lot of references to the actual kitchen machine Blender, but usually Blender 3D modeling is also in there somewhere as well. But of course, just typing in the address directly, www.blender.org, and it will take you to their website. Once you come here, you will see that they are now up to version 2.83. They've fixed up a lot more little bugs and things. 2.8 was actually the version that updated the user interface to make it a lot easier to use than it used to be. So we're all very lucky that this is a free resource that we can use to do a lot of great 3D modeling and 3D animations. So to download Blender, all you got to do is just click on the link right here, and it should automatically detect what kind of device you're currently on. So you can either download Blender onto a Windows computer, a Mac OS computer, or a Linux computer. Unfortunately, it does not work with Androids yet, although I have heard that there are hacks out there that you can use to get it to work with a Linux installation. So you'll have to just look around if you want to try and get it to work on a Chromebook. It will be a little bit more tricky, but supposedly it is possible. Once you actually get here, you can click on download to download it. Now, the other thing I would also mention too, though, is if you happen to be a gamer and you have the Steam client for the Steam game distribution service, you can also find Blender in their catalog as well. The handy part about using Steam is that Steam will keep it constantly updated for you all the time, while otherwise you'd have to keep on revisiting the website if you want to make sure that you have the latest version. This is particularly important because very often there might be bugs and the like that get squashed in later versions, so you want to try and keep up with the latest version at least. So of course you'll see right here in my Steam account here, along with the games that I like to play, I also have listed right up on top my own version of Blender. So I can just go ahead and click on this, click the launch button, and it's just the same as if I had installed Blender directly from the website onto my computer. So both are very useful ways of getting Blender. Feel free to use whichever way you want to get into Blender. And that is how we get to Blender. So starting out here, I'm just going to give you a quick little tutorial showing how we have different aspects of the user interface here. So typically when we start up with Blender, we start out by seeing the intro screen, which of course I already clicked past. So let me bring that back up again. So here's the intro screen, the little intro logo and the like that shows the current artwork that they're featuring for the latest version. This seems to be some kind of weird cyberpunk cityscape or something. Kind of cool looking. By Ian Huber, or Huber, I don't know. So once you get here then, you'll be given a choice to open up previous files that you might have been working on, or to open up new files. There's even options for video editing if you want to actually take a video file and edit it around. It's actually a pretty decent video editing tool, again, because it's free. Can't really complain too much. There are other video editing services out there, such as Camtasia, and even the ones that come with Windows aren't bad. And there's also one that comes with Blender. So Blender does have some video editing, and while we design our 3D animation, we'll even do a little bit of video editing too. But for the most part, for us to actually start exploring Blender, all you got to do is just click on a new file, a general new file, or you can even just click outside the window here, and we will see our basic general new file. So once we are in Blender here, we can go ahead and just take a look around. First thing I'm going to show you how to do is to take a look around your object. The general startup file that we have always starts out with a cube, a camera, and a light source. You're going to see as I click around on these with the left mouse button every single time, I can see them highlighted over here in the scene collection every single time. So I can see what it is that I'm currently working on and what its name is by looking over here on the right-hand side. The other thing I'm going to be using over the course of this class is a special add-on that will show what my keystrokes are as I'm currently typing. So as I type, you're going to see down here in the lower left-hand corner the different keys that I'm pressing as I type to do the things that I want to do. So as I click and hold the middle mouse button, I can orbit around the object that I currently have selected. In this case, it is the cube. You can also orbit around the center of your focus. Actually, I shouldn't say it's really the object, it's actually the center of my focus. I can orbit around it also by going up here to this little wheel up in the upper corner here and left clicking on it. And I can also orbit around it by going up there. This is particularly handy if you happen to have a mouse that doesn't have a middle mouse button, or even if you are using a touch screen or a touch pad on a laptop. You can go right up here into this corner, click and drag around to orbit around your object. The next thing we can do then is also panning around our object, which means shifting the focus from side to side. One way of doing that is by pressing the Shift button and the middle mouse button, shifting left and right. And this, of course, will also change where the orbit is going to be. So now that I orbit around here, it will now orbit around the new location that I panned to. So again, that's Shift and the middle mouse. And likewise, too, up here in this corner, we also have a panning option up here, which they call as just move the view. So it is the icon in this upper corner here, upper right-hand corner here, showing a hand. When you click on that, you're able to pan left and right. Going back to the mouse button again, if I use the mouse wheel and I roll it in and out, you can see that you can use that for zooming in and zooming out. And likewise, again, in the upper right-hand corner is this little magnifying box that also does the same thing. So as we go through Blender in the next few weeks, you're going to discover that there are often multiple ways of doing the exact same thing. So I'm going to try to show several ways of doing it, and you can just end up doing whichever way is most comfortable to you. But likewise, too, if you ever happen to stumble upon a particular way and you're like, oh no, this isn't what Doug said. Doug was talking about doing something else. What did I do wrong? Well, don't worry, you didn't do anything wrong. You just found a different way of doing the exact same thing that we were already doing. More of these buttons right here. There is the camera view, which will actually snap us inside the camera so we can actually see what the camera sees. We can also get to the camera view by pressing the 0 button or the INS button, the insert button, on your number pad. If you happen to be using a keyboard that has a number pad, a lot of laptops don't have the number pad. But if I press the numpad 0, it also puts me inside the camera. And then this last one right down here will allow me to switch it from a perspective view to an orthographic view. An orthographic view is a good way to get a nice geometric view of the object you're working on, so you can actually see all sides a little better. There are some limited situations when that can be useful, and we'll be going over them as we work on this class over the next few weeks. So just so you know, at least, if you ever hear me say, oh, I'm switching to the orthographic view, I can switch that by clicking that right over here, or again, by pressing the numpad 5 button. So these are all the basic ways to take a look around the object. We can also then press G to grab the object and push it around. So I'm now moving my cube by grabbing it with the G button. Or I can rotate the cube with the R button and rotate it all around. Or I can scale it by pressing the S button, and it will scale it larger or smaller. All of those functions are also here on the left-hand side. So same thing, when I said I grabbed it, I can also just use the grab function, the grab button over here, and I'll be able to just click on it with the left mouse and drag it all around. Same thing with the rotate function. When I click on it over here, it gives me these handy little wheels on the side, and I can rotate it around. Now, one thing, of course, you're going to be noticing as I'm messing with these is that when I click on it over on the side here, it's actually giving me the colors of all the directions. You're going to see that the red direction is always corresponding with the X direction. The green arrow is always with the Y direction. And the blue arrow is always with the Z direction. So for example, if I'm rotating around the Z axis, that means it's rotating right around the middle. If I'm rotating around the X axis, it's going to go around the middle of that axis. And then the same thing, of course, also applies with the scale here. When I switch into scale mode, you see these little blocks on the end, and I can expand something along the X-axis only. Or I can expand it on the Y-axis only. Oops, pressed the wrong button. Here we are. So of course, these are all handy ways to get it to stretch along those particular sizes, or I can even grab it in the middle and just stretch it along every single axis. Now these also work too, even if I'm using the hotkeys. So for example, if I press G to move my object, you're going to see that there's no arrows on it, but I can still lock it into one of the axes just by pressing the name of that axis on the keyboard. So if I press X after I've grabbed it, you'll see that the block goes along the red X-axis. Then when I press G to grab it and I press Y, it goes along the green axis. Same thing, press G and Z and it'll go along the Z axis. Same thing goes with rotating. If I press Z after rotating it, it's only going to rotate around the center Z axis. And so on and so on. You will also see that we also have these same functions for the scales. And then if I want to go back to select mode, I just go right back up here to the top where I say I have the select box, and I can click on my objects again to see what they're doing. So these are all the very basics, and we're going to go into more detail next week. So this will be a 5-week course. And so I hope you will all join us. Again, my name is Doug Tepe with Tinker and Create, and we will be featuring a 3D modeling and animation class starting next week here live on Facebook at 6 p.m. on Thursday the 26th. I hope to see you there.